Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art, Monday, March 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Alex Cohen, Programming Director of Artist Talk on Art. Artist Talk on Art is the world's longest running arts panel forum in art history. Founded in 1974, ATOA has held and recorded over 1,200 events in audio and video, featuring more than 9,000 artists and other art professionals. All ATOA events are recorded, copyrighted, and then posted to our YouTube channel, Artist Talk on Art 2026. Please hold your questions and comments until the last part of our 90-minute event and remain muted until that time. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Ginny and Wendy. Ginnie Gardiner has built a distinguished career with numerous solo and group shows spanning 4 decades. Ginny graduated from Cornell University with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in 1974. Recent solo exhibitions include The Color Prophecies at the Woodstock Artists Association and Museum, Interlusion Recent Painting and Collage at Carrie Chen Gallery in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and a bi-solo exhibition, Ginnie Gardiner and Amy Toludo Echo Recent Painting and Collage at the Albany International Airport Gallery. Last fall, Gardiner's studio was featured in a video and interview on Inside Out, Upstate New York, in the studio with Ginnie Gardiner. Wendy Smith writes about literature and arts for a variety of publications, including the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and the American Theater Museum. She is a contributing editor at the American Scholar, which has published more than a dozen of her essays. She's a member of the board of trustees at the Red Bull Theater in New York City. She is the author of Real Life Drama, The Group Theater in America, 1931 to 1940. And now I'll hand it over to them.
Thank you. I'm going to start by saying that Ginny and I have been friends for 40 years, which still amazes me when I think about it. And this last spring in 2025, she invited me up to her studio. We usually meet in New York to see shows. And I was very excited because for 40 years, I've been watching her work evolve and change. And I've been fascinated to hear about her process. And I knew that the move to Catskill 15 years ago had made an enormous change in both her art and the way she creates it. And so, Ginny, I came up and we had a fantastic talk, and you'll tell everyone more about it.
Yeah, it was Wendy, always great talking with you. Wendy and I have been hanging out and looking at galleries and art for like decades, and I realized she'd been following my work and for since the late 1980s, and I realized after my move, here's a photo. Here you can see the studio here. This is looking towards my living room. You can see the doors flanked by two interspace um, paintings on either side. And this studio, um, I realized I wanted to invite Wendy up because it had been a long time since we'd actually sat down and talked about my process. And I wanted, Wendy had written several wonderful essays over the years on my work, one in 2000, and then another one in the teens around 2000. I think it was 15, Wendy.
I think it was 2011. It was very early after you
Yeah,
moved.
right. And then I realized that my series of works that I've been working on now, in the last 8 years, that we hadn't really sat down. We visited each other upstate and downstate, but we hadn't really sat down and talked about my process, what I've been up to in the last pretty much 8 years. Um, where there was a significant change in my work. So I invited Wendy to come up last spring. And here you can see in this image, you can see there I am sitting surrounded by some of my recent interspace paintings in the studio. And it was great because Wendy came up and we had a good whole talk about process, looking at basically work from 2018 when I started working, zeroing in very much on the study of color, because the move upstate from New York City for me was just it totally brought me back to my first love, which was color, form, and space. The years painting in my Chelsea loft, which is a Northlight studio, was wonderful in terms of, just the practice of being a professional artist, getting up, working in the loft, painting, showing my work. But the subject tended to be in the 90s, more historical reference because I didn't have the light, the southwest east light that I have up here. I didn't have a color laboratory so much. So I was working from studies, which I've always done for the last 40 years, from studies, creating studies for my paintings. But when I came up here, I've been here for 20 years now. And when I came upstate to the village of Catskill, the light, it was just my subject again became pretty much color and the study of it. So here you're looking at an image of what I call my artifact color series. And these are basically inspired by Joseph Albers' homage to the square series. And the the way they evolved was at the end of a painting session in my studio, I had these colors that I'd mixed on my palette. And I started every night at the end of my painting session laying down my mixtures. So these colors that you're seeing, um, it's on the left here. I'll just go back to one of them. You're seeing these are mixtures from my palette, and I'm taking these mixtures and I'm also creating little circles and squares. I'm cutting out squares and circles and diamond shapes and laying them over the woodblock papers. And I realized that with my opaque mixtures, I was getting the effect of transparency, which is what Joseph Albers taught. Basically, that if you get the values right, not, it doesn't matter what the color is. Basically, if you get the light and dark relationships right, you create the illusion of transparency. And this is what I've been doing all my adult life as a painter. I've been mixing optically and trying to achieve, looking at, color effects, lighting and glass and transparency and translucency and optically mixing those colors. But I hadn't really realized that this is what I was doing. So I was zeroing in really on Joseph Albers'
And this is what kind of led you to the interlusion series of paintings, because those are collages, and you are kind of working out ideas about phenomenal transparency. And then
yes.
you get into this whole area of paintings with trompe l'oeil effects and some sort of physical objects, right?
Well, basically here, this was an interesting thing because I was combining the artifact color collages. You can see one on the left here, and on the right you can see an interlusion painting from 2020. And that interlusion painting, I call the series interlusion because you can see it, that's actually a scarf. And what I was doing is I was photographing scarves out in my courtyard, with backlit against the sky. And then I was taking my photographs into Photoshop in my studio and digitally layering them over my artifact color collages on the left and playing with the opacity levels. So you get the effect of it's interlusion. So you're seeing a digital and an actual and an actual collage being combined to create these studies for my paintings. And I did a whole series of them. Um, Basically, here's another one. Here's an artifact collage from 2018. And
I love looking at the way you took a collage and turned it into a painting, because really you're, even though collages are very important in your process, it's always about the painting, right?
well, yeah, what I'm trying to do is what I'm doing, I'm playing with so many things on my tabletop, the artifact color collages. I'm playing with with looking at what is appealing to me optically and what I want to paint. And when I'm creating with my shapes and cutouts and on the tabletop, when I see something that I feel could be a painting, I start refining it. I start refining it and creating. I want to create something that I feel I want to translate into the medium of oil paint. That's always been what I enjoy doing. Here's another one where I'm just like layering basically a piece of fabric with that's I had over a chair onto another artifact color collage, and I'm getting this abstraction. These oil paintings are like, 40 by 30 inches, 50 by 40 inches. They're large, and the artifact color collages are only like 6 by 7 inches and stuff. So you see, I do go way up in scale. I create a very small color study. This is a 7 by like 5 inch artifact color collage here. And then here's a 50 by 40 inch oil painting.
Is it ever hard to go up in scale? How does that work for you?
Well, that's what I love. I love the challenge of creating a scale, scaling in the oil medium, because those things do change. You definitely have to make adjustments, and you're definitely working, in batches of pigment. So, and getting optically getting those pigments to read as transparent, that's what I love doing.
Mhm.
Because it looks like a transparency, but these are all my oil mixtures are opaque. So I've been mixing for years. I spend most of my time before I paint mixing. I have tons and piles of just, palette mixtures. And this was the Interlusion series, and this went from about 2019 to 22. Um, and Then I started playing around with the layered fabrics over the artifact color collages here. You can see in this interlusion of 2022, I basically, what happened here? Where did I go? Let me go back to my book. Here we go. I'll just go. I think my grid can get me to where we were. Where were we? Here we are. Okay. It's flipping around on me. So basically, you see the torn edges there. Now I'm getting back to, taking photographs of the painting, ripping those up and getting these edges. So I'm starting to play around back more on my tabletop, and I'm creating with, color with this collage. This is the painting. This is a 60 by 48 inch painting, but it's created with collage elements from my tabletop. So, and this is another one. And this will be actually in a show that a wonderful curator Todd Bartell is curating for a collage show that will be a part of the symposium on collage this summer. This will be at the Dutchess Community College in an exhibition there with the collage, which that should be interesting.
And these start to give you sort of a little bit of a three-dimensional feel. And I know you were starting to feel with
Yes, yes,
Interlusion that you
and
wanted more.
it gets into that. So this was a feeling. This is a little bit on a personal note. My husband had fought John Phillips. I was married to him for many years, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2016, and he died in 2020. And in the period from 2020, like in the pandemic going into 22, it's a very, very quiet period of time for me, very meditative. I was very grateful to have the Artifact Color series, but it was a softer, you see the fabrics and the blends and everything else was a very meditative period of time for me. It was very dreamlike. And I found by 2023, I think you can see it in this painting, I was starting to get a little bit more edge, a little bit more vibrancy. It was an interesting feeling of coming out of mourning, and feeling like I wanted to shake things up a little bit. I wanted to play a little bit more with edge. I wanted to start creating some planar uh,
Mhm.
pieces. And you can see here in 2024, I'm starting to I'm photographing objects, playing with shapes and shadows, and I'm starting to really play with them in a more energetic way, where the shapes are jostling and they're very tightly composed, but they're jostling, and there's a little more energy coming in. And I can see that looking back at it now. I can see it. You don't see it when you're doing these transitions, but the main inspiration I got for this period, I call this the Interspace series.
Yeah,
Well,
can you talk about the title? Because it's a cool
yeah,
title.
I was very, very excited to. I was Interspace. I read Peter Weibel's book. It was called Negative Space: Trajectories of Sculpture in the 20th and 21st Centuries. He wrote it in 2021. He was a MIT professor. He died unfortunately a few years ago at age 78. He wrote this brilliant book, Negative Space. And I read that in the fall of 2022. And it made me think so much about the way planar space and basically the conceptual shift in terms of sculpture, from the Rodin, the subject is sculpture is mass, where you get into the 1900s, and basically the influence of the modernist sculptors, they're creating space. Space is mass, and so it was, Julio Gonzalez. I always loved his metal cutout sculptures. Picasso's guitar, where
Mm,
you start seeing these that the shapes the spaces around the shapes are as important as the shapes themselves, and they actually energize the shapes. I was especially excited about that because I realized, why don't I make some folded paper sculptures as subjects, and give equal weight to the shapes and their shadows, to go back and forth between 2 and 3 dimensional space. So this is what I'm now. Here you can see is a picture of my paper sculptures on my tabletop 2024. You see, I create these paper sculptures and I photograph them. And as you can see, I can you can see so many different kinds of relationships, and they start activating the space. And so basically, this has been what my focus for the last 3 years. And I'm also playing with, back to Joseph Albers again. I'm between Joseph Albers and Weibel's planar considerations. There's a lot to mine there. There's so much great subject in terms of my wanting to create abstract elements to paint, because I always paint optically, but I wanted to create these abstract situations from my own abstract shapes. So it was interesting. It was a nice development because it freed me from, I could use a little figural reference if I wanted to, but I didn't have to anymore. It became a pure study of color, shape, and form. So in this particular piece, Interspace 2, 2023, my setup has acetates. You can see these acetates I'm weaving in and out of my photos of cut photos of vases and things, and I'm playing around and creating this spatial play here. So this is another element. Once again, um, here's a painting in the studio showing my sculptural shapes in a
And
space.
shadows always also got to be very much an element in this once you started working with three-dimensional setups, right?
Yes, absolutely. Shadows have always been extremely important to me. And it was so interesting, Wendy, because when I look at my paintings historically, I had an amazing sort of couple of years back in 1998 and 99 into 2000, exploring Tiepolo's paintings, and
Yeah, I remember.
I realized why in the last 5 or 6 years, because that wonderful bounce light that he got on his shadows, the clouds, the underbelly light, I was going for that.
Hmm.
And I was creating montage paintings with fragments of Tiepolo and then my own figural work in a series of shows that I did back in 2000, talking with Tiepolo. But it was because of the shadow, the color in his shadows. And many painters have been have looked at that and noticed it. Fairfield Porter is another one who
Hmm.
really appreciated what Tiepolo did with color in the shadows. So here now we're going back here to another one of the acetate pieces. Here you can see, just as I was saying, if you look at this is Interspace 22. Do you see that bright green underbelly of the
Hmm.
curved paper? It's like a bounce light. And that could be, it's just so optically vivid. And I love those effects. I love trying to get them and that's what I do as a colorist.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um uh
Well,
say
that's always been your whole focus, I've watched your style change over 40 years in some pretty dramatic ways. It's become much more abstract, but it's always about light and color, right? And
yeah.
moving to a place with that amazing sunlight made a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. Being able to see, it's like a laboratory. It's like a light laboratory. And you can create little objects and play with them and take a look and see when you play with them and move them in the light. It's endlessly fascinating what you can do when you have good light. And for me, it's, sometimes I'll take my papers and I'll take them outside into the courtyard and so outside of the house because it's unimpeded light, no window deals or anything like that. And, I'll just shoot because you can get a wonderful, like a laboratory of light. Here is this, you can see where I'm kind of playing with, these are cut out pieces of paper and shapes, but I'm creating a sort of it's almost a little surreal looking, this oil painting.
Yeah. Can you
Um,
talk about a bit about your composition? Because I love the feeling, especially with these interspace paintings, they're very busy and there's a lot going on, but there's also this amazing sense of how carefully composed they are. And I'm wondering how deliberate that process is for you.
It's very, very, I really am a draftsman. I draw one practice that I started very rigorously. I've always drawn a lot. I've always drawn a ton. I mean, I've been drawing since I was 5 years old. I've always grew up with a newsprint pad and always drawing from figure. I mean, it was like learning to talk for me. But basically, since 20 in the January of 23, so it's been 3 years now. Um, I draw every morning when I wake up for about an hour. And what I do is when I have a study that I'm working, when I think I'm going to do a painting, first I do drawings. And every single study I have has a very fully rendered drawing. I just use a nice 6B pencil on a Reeves paper, a very nice Reeves drawing paper. And I sit with the study and I sit with the paper and I make a very, a very, very I consider everything. I get rid of when I'm composing on the tabletop, these look a lot messier, there's a lot other distracted things going on. I really clean it up. I mean, I'm really creating, I'm sort of a designer in that sense of my studies. I create the spatial, the whole movement that I want. I wanted a real kind of back and forth, very, very dancey kind of feel. So these are not like what you just see with the papers on the table. They're pretty much cleaned up. I've worked out drawings, basically, photography, tabletop, then cleaning some things up in Photoshop, doing drawings. It's a combination of those of that to get this study that I want. You can see here, this is a very simplified this is oil on linen, just like a torn paper with a curved paper. But you see, it's a very, very, very rigorously designed space.
And,
Um,
and you've always been, you do use Photoshop and things like that. You've always been really comfortable with digital technology, but it's all about the painting.
Exactly. It's all in the service of painting. Anything I use, whether it's a Photoshop or the camera or the drawing or the cutout shapes, I'm always thinking about if I start seeing something going towards a painting, I really push it because the mixing of the colors, it's something that optically being able to get the same color, that to be able to mix it, to have that mastery, to be able to get those, knowing that what I basically do is I create a, it's almost like like a jigsaw of the color notes that I'm going to use in a painting when I'm seeing the setup. You know, I'm already creating a palette. And I'm thinking of those paintings. I'm thinking of that green as a phthalo green with lemon, cadmium yellow, lemon. I'm thinking, I'm looking at the colors and I'm thinking, of the mixtures that I'm going to be, the pigments I'm going to be using. Um,
Mhm.
and so Here's another one. This is a painting from 2024, Interspace 38. It's got the curved papers, and I loved just putting some like a yellow acetate over my these different curved papers because I got these wonderful ochres and these wonderful transitional, as you can see. It's like a
Mhm.
shallow space with the color design. But tightly composed, to answer your question, they're very tightly composed. And you've seen my drawings. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they're very worked out. I have them on my website. It just says Interspace Drawings, and you can see they're nice. They're small, but they're like on a nice, I love that nice Reeves, a good toothy drawing paper. You get also, I
Well,
think
I love the fact that at the one hand, so much of your work is about color and light, but on the other hand, drawing is such a foundational element of it. It's really
yeah.
an interesting mix.
And it was interesting because I always loved to draw, but now I even more because um, I I really enjoy the shadings, because when I'm doing a shading like a black and white drawing, I'm getting the massings and I'm getting the light and dark, but it's color too. And it's always been all my life, you want to say, well, you're a good draftsman, and now here's the color. And there's been a lot of back and forth and kind of a tug of war with a lot of it for a lot of artists. And I'm feeling like I'm in a good flow right now because they feel integrated
Uh-huh.
working
Yeah.
working simultaneously on the drawing while I'm painting and doing subsequent studies of I'll do drawing studies of the painting. I'll stop on a painting. Also, if I'm having trouble where I want to transition or how the painting is resolving, I'll go back to the drawing. So it's definitely a nice integral part
Mhm.
of the process. This is a very this is a very early kind of modernist kind of, I was thinking, of the early, like, Stuart Davis's and the
Yep.
kind of thing, with this kind of palette, which I love.
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
love once again, the layering of the cut papers, felt very satisfying here in creating the shapes.
Yep. No, and these beautiful sculptural shapes. I mean, there's just sort of a wonderful, it's a wonderful mix of things, which I really love. So
Thank
yeah.
you, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. And basically, this was a nice, really, this piece right now, oops, whoever that is going to go away. Um, this piece, Interspace 51, it's in a show right now, a focus show juried by Rudy Vavra. Really, really lovely show. It's called Focus, a Feast for the Eye. And this is a large oil painting. And I really enjoyed creating the study for this because you can see like almost like a low relief shadow Basically, these are I cut out the shapes from my photographs of a vase, like a donut vase. They're like vases with a hole in them. I shot a lot of photographs on it of it against a pink sweep, cut them out, and I put them on a piece of plexiglass over a large yellow piece of paper. And so you see that wonderful ochre, the brown ochre
Mhm.
shadows that those shapes create. And it's just I'm doing more of that because it's fun. You get talking about the shadows being as equally important as the shapes.
Mhm.
This is the kind of thing that I love to study because they equal they they read as an overall design.
Mhm.
And then I'll join the shadows. If you see in the painting, I'll join the shadows with some of the edges and some of the contour lines of the objects. So I do a lot of in my drawing. I do a lot of contour drawing. You might, if you can see that, where my lines continue from a shape to a solid to a negative space. But
Mhm.
I'll do a line like a I do a lot of contour line drawings too. I did several of this for this one. Um,
Mhm.
this is a more simplified version, but I think I feel satisfied with it.
Yeah.
It's very much about transparency, and I
Mhm.
really enjoyed the getting the opaque mixtures to resolve like this.
Well, I kind of love the contrast between this, which is very sort of serene and
Yeah,
composed, whereas the previous one, which is marvelous, is busier and has like jabs of other colors. It's really it's like you can pretty much do what you want in terms of mood and
right,
composition.
exactly. This is not, yeah, this is sort of a resting, it feels nice. It feels kind of nice. You've got the solidity of the rectangles. It's very, it's a, it sits really nicely.
Mhm.
And here it's just a photograph where you can see my paper sculptures on my work table, my
Mhm.
tabletop. You can see the
Yeah.
kind of light and things. See, I'll take those and I will cut them out and I'll, create shapes, for my designs. But you can see, basically, I'm just shooting papers on the table and then I'm using them as design elements.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I get to see when I'm doing my drawings. I get the balances. I get the shapes and their balances, and I can design. I design, going into the painting. So here's some of my drawings. You can see it's just a graphite on the Reeves paper.
And it's so interesting to me, and I still don't quite understand it because I'm not a visual artist, but when you talked about how working in black and white with the drawings and everything helps you sort of see the values and things. Can you talk about that a little more?
Well, basically, when you're drawing. Sometimes the color can, can actually get in the way of seeing whether or not, overall compositionally, for me anyway, the whole design is working. And so
Mhm.
sometimes I'll even take if I'm doing a color, um, with all my folded papers and things. Sometimes I'll even throw it into, Photoshop and just say lose color. I'll just go to a black and white version of it. Because I grew up really thinking about basically lights and darks, and then more as a draftsperson, and my color mastery came later in life. So I see things, I see shapes, I see light and dark shapes. That's how I draw. So I've always been able to draw pretty much anything I see because my eyes see just the shapes.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing the shapes, I'm seeing the negative space, I'm seeing I'm always, I just, that's the way I, see space. So I work, kind of, it's almost like a contrapuntal way, you can see the lights and darks and lights and darks. I kind of play with them.
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
the elements, I kind of play with them. So this is a more, you're right, this is more of a you know, this is more jazzy. It's more energetic.
Uh-huh.
This one, this one is just kind of what it is, it's just cut papers, and I just kind of wanted to just play with the ragged edges and
Mhm.
the different shapes. Here,
And after you'd been drawing for a while, you started to want to incorporate graphic elements in the interspace paintings.
exactly, and I'll get to that. That's exactly right. There are two things. The two main things were the folded paper sculptures as subjects. And then also, I started looking at, here we go. Wendy, your question is just, your timing is great. You're,
That's my job.
well, after all, you did write the essay for the catalog. Um, so that's, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your writing. And so I love your writing because sometimes you focus me on what I'm thinking about, and it's interesting. And
Hmm.
as I got into this interspace series, I was you see the little the light bulbs in there in the drawing. Um, they I I started looking at Le Corbusier. I was looking at his tapestries, and I was looking at Leger, and I was looking at Philip Guston, and I was looking at the way they drew, and I was realizing that I don't want to use pencil on an oil painting, but I said, how can I translate the drawing element? How can I introduce a drawing element into my painting? Here's some of the drawings I was doing, just my personal iconography, pieces around the house, a shell, a corbel, part of a vase. How can I get them into um, into the paint? And I started practicing and working, say, here's a painting. And I was very pleased to realize that I could, with my different brushes, if you look at this oil on linen, it's 50 by 40. If you look at the light bulb drawing, I just had to use a different kind of brush, like a grainer
Mhm.
brush. I had to use it, and I had to scumble it. It's all oil, but so I practiced, and I've learned now how to, scumble and like almost like a dry brush scumbling to achieve that graphite feel, to achieve the feeling of a drawing in the painting.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I was looking at Guston, and I was looking at Leger, and looking at what Corbusier did, and it was it's a very interesting development because I think it works. I've got the
Uh-huh.
transparencies, I've got the graphite, but now I'm doing something even. Um, Now I'm actually drawing. I'm using graphite on the folded sculptural elements in my latest,
Right. I
which
remember
are
you
on my
telling me about
website.
that.
Yeah. And so I'm actually creating abstract. I'm drawing I'm making painting. Gonna make paintings that have that drawn element, but they will be drawn from the abstract, planar sculptures.
Now, you've always been, it's been, your work lately has been increasingly abstract, but there's always been a figural element, and it's always been so interesting to watch you sort of integrate the two. Um,
Yes.
what does adding figural elements do for an
Well,
abstract
I like it,
composition?
it really, yeah, each one different things, different compositions have asked for different things,
Sure.
and they've kind of inspired me, or they pushed me to say, well, how do I resolve this? This is a painting, Interspace 85 last year, a 40 by 50-inch painting, and you can see this vase. I have several blown glass vases that have wonderful translucency. So you've got this sort of coral reddish vase there on the left in the painting. And how I integrated it by taking a photo of it, and then I cut it out and laid it into my tabletop setup with my papers. And I layered over some acetates and various things, and drew some lines to integrate this wonderful shaped vase into the design, which is the rest of it is all quite abstract.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I like this, and it gave me, it just feels satisfied me. Uh, Here's another. This is the catalog cover, and it's uh, uh, Interspace 104, and last year. And
Mhm.
it got some drawn elements, drawn papers where I'm just making lines. It has acetates, it has the vases cut out. So I'm using figural elements, but abstractly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And I know we're sort of at the end of the catalog, but I know you've sort of moved on from there to do other things if you want to show some on your website.
Let me just see here. I could go, let me see if I can get back to the recent work here. Just go back here. Let me go back to the interspace drawings. How do I get down? How do I get this smaller? Might have a problem here with, let me go back again. I'm going to try my website again. Here we go. Whoops, now it's flashing. We don't want
Uh-oh.
that. I think we did a no-no here.
Oh, we
Um,
could read your email in the meanwhile.
ah, let me see again. Oops. Let me try the book. No, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done
Oh,
that.
too bad. I'm
We
sorry.
gave
That
it
was
we
my
gave it a
idea.
nervous breakdown.
You could try stop sharing and start again.
Yeah, let
That's
me
a good
try
idea.
that. Let me try soft sharing.
No, because I know you've been moving in slightly different directions, just sort of incorporating new things.
No. Okay. I'm gonna quit Firefox and let me try Chrome.
There you go. Another website, another browser always helps.
Uh-oh. Nope. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Well, my apologies. I was the one who suggested it. You want to just go back to the catalog?
I don't know if, let me see if I can go back. Share. I'll try it again. Mm, let me see if I have any luck again. Nope.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, guys.
That's weird.
Well, let me try again. I will, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll try to rejoin you, okay?
Okay.
Let me see if I can stop. I'll leave and come back. I don't know what to do. Let me try to.
I actually don't think that's the problem. I don't think it's I think
What,
that it's
what do
either
you,
the resharing. I'm sorry,
let's go ahead. No, please
that put
talk.
me,
Yeah.
what, no, I think that, can you quit you quit the application already? You quit the one browser and you tried another browser? Is that what you're doing? And everything is online. Do you have anything that's on your computer? Can you,
Let me see. That's a good idea.
rather than trying to do it off, on the line, online, go to just your computer?
Let me see if I can go to.
Stop,
I
yeah,
could go
stop,
to,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me try that. Good idea.
okay. That's about all I can, that's all I can offer at the moment.
Let me see. I'm very good. Let me try that. Good suggestion. Um, hold on a sec. I'm just going to go here. Let me see if I can share here. I can go to my latest Interspace series that way, maybe, and show. Can I go into? This is not going to, well, let's see if I get.
And you might want to stop sharing and then click on all that and get it up there and then start sharing.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. So what I could do is go into my Adobe Bridge, go to some images there, maybe. No, that's not working there. This is going to be rather cumbersome. I'm not going to because it's very much like I'm going to try once more. No,
Maybe try Chrome instead of Firefox to get to your website.
I think I tried that.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that was my talk. I don't know what happened, but
Well, it was a fabulous talk. And
oh, thank you, Ben.
are the two of you going to interact a little bit now before the audience, or
Sure, that's a great idea. We can have a chat now. Because
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. It's never happened before and everything.
nothing to be sorry about? It was fabulous.
Okay.
It was great.
No, I
Thank you,
just,
Doug.
as I've said, for me, Ginny, it's always been so exciting, not just being your friend, which is wonderful, but because I'm a writer, to see how a visual artist works and to see the process and how deliberate it is. And I've always been amazed by how intellectual you're, not that your work is intellectual, but that you're so deeply versed in the history of art and in influences. I guess maybe I'll ask you to talk a little bit about that again. You've talked about Albers, you've talked about Picasso, you've talked about Gonzalez, I mean Guston and so on, but what is it, why is it so important to you to be sort of part of that history, to be knowledgeable about that history, I guess is a question.
I just think I've always loved it.
Yeah.
I'm a real bibliophile, And when I was younger, when I got out of Cornell in the 70s and I was in New York City, um, I had the privilege of running a CETA jobs program at the Foundation for the Community of Artists and interviewing, and in my 20s, interviewing artists who were in their 40s and 50s and 60s with their portfolios and things. And it was just amazing to me. I mean, the amazing. I mean, it was like getting a PhD or something. I mean, I was just graduated, and I was talking with such a wide, like a couple thousand artists. So I started really going around to all the galleries, and um, and I started working as an editor for a newspaper that was called what's it called? It was run by Bruce Hooton. It was an art newspaper, and he basically had a few of us going out like his beat. He'd say, "Okay, Jen, you go to Midtown, and okay, Judd, you go down and cover, what Mary Boone's doing at whatever." And and we'd all come back. We'd go do our reviews and go into the galleries, and so I mean, I was really very, very fortunate that in the 80s, I was able to go into galleries they could pull things out from the racks. I could write, on a wide range of subjects. So I started collecting books, monographs on artists. And it's been that's sort of how I've sort of self-educated since college, basically. Now I have, as you know, like,
Oh my God.
hundreds, amazing catalogs going way back. And I keep doing, I find that, I love writing. I love good writers, and writers of biographies, and so it's really the main source of my inspiration. Um,
Mhm.
and when I get on, when I discover an area that really speaks to me, I really do explore it. I explore it, myself in any way I can to see the work, to see the paintings in the flesh, that's why Wendy and I have been going to galleries and museums since the early 90s, yeah, for like
Yeah, I think so.
35,
Yeah.
35 years. And I go down every month, and so we catch like, but next week we're going to go see Carol Beauvais at the
Yeah, yeah,
Guggenheim.
can't wait.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I love it on my end because I'm a word person. And so to stand in a room with an artist and I look at a painting and go, oh, I love that. And she looks at it and goes, look at those colors, look at the way it's composed, look at the
yeah.
way these things interact. So it's a completely different, it's a total education in what goes on. Now,
Well,
you always used to joke about when you were at Cornell, you were sort of not a fish out of water, but you were doing things that they go, no, no, no,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not what you do. And
That
you
was
know,
that was very interesting because I was at Cornell in the early 70s, and that was the time of the color field painting and minimalism. And I was lucky I painted on, Friedel Zubas was a painting professor of mine, but we got along well, but we like to fight. You can't do that. I'd bring in a painting of sitting in the field,
oh, I love that.
painting, and he would have his large canvases 30 yards, 30 feet wide, long, and all with his assistants rolling out these wonderful swaths of paint. And so bringing in a small setup or studio, like a still life or something, was just like, I mean, you just couldn't do that. That was a big no-no. But it was great to be around people that were focused purely on color. I mean, I appreciated the rigor of it and the focus of it. But it's but they were in, and they appreciated my intelligence and my interest in sort of developing my own voice. They were never negative in a way, but they would just kind of laugh and say, you can't, or someone say, a compliment from one of the color field painters was like, I don't know why, I'm not supposed to like this, but Gardner, that's not a bad painting, you know?
Now, how did you have the self-confidence? Because you're very young and these are very
Yeah.
well-established people to sort of stick to your own guns. I mean, you've always really gone your own way.
I used to get back at them and I'd say, minimalists can't dance, that, dancing. I'd say, I don't see you down at the Salty Dog or whatever, because I was, 20 years old. But it was, yeah, it was basically, um, it was a good time to be there because I actually enjoyed it because it was architecture, art, and planning school. And now I'm realizing, because I realized that some of the people that I was hanging out with and stuff, some of the architects, they'd invite me to go look at their crits or what they were creating for their presentations, which were very intense because they were doing, villas and models of, modernist structures. It was the Corbusier school. And they were creating little sculptural paper, cutout things and styrofoam things. They were creating little models,
Hmm,
spatial, and I think that was an influence to see
sure.
architects were working with, planes and creating all of these things. And I always really liked that, the way they would create, little villas and things and spatial things and with the lighting and everything else. So, it's architecture and art are very, very interrelated. And I think that's why going back to with Corbusier, his I knew him as a big influence on my architecture friends because it was Corbusier is an architect, but it was now just all really in the last 10 years that I've discovered him as a painter,
Hmm.
tapestry.
Yeah. Yeah. You've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, and he with his drawing and his combining abstraction with figuration and and so it's you can I believe in I'm very much in terms of montage thinking, out of collage.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah, and because uh I like making, and also I really like making models. I like making. As a matter of fact, I'm making now. I just a curator was just here today. He chose a couple of them. Like just this is a whole new thing. Um, um, two three-dimensional collages for a show, and that's
Yeah.
brand new. It's very interesting. So I'll have to put them in some kind of lucite, box kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it's like it feels like an adjunct. It feels like a part of my practice now. Why not? And also it's a study of light. When you have a three-dimensional collage, now you can photograph that in all of
Hmm.
these different light situations.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
you're creating a whole other folio of light effects and things too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so that's interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any sense? We weren't alas able to look at them, but do you have any sense of how your newest paintings are moving on from the things we looked at in the catalog?
I think that they will incorporate more of the three-dimensional the studies. I think that there'll be more. I'll be trying to do more things like trying to figure out how to translate, say, a piece of wire sculpture and a thing, or how to paint that, how to make it feel, how to make it pictorial space, two-dimensional space, with the tools and the thing. And I think I'm just, trying to, widen my vocabulary out a little bit more. But but
Hmm.
uh, but it always comes from the design process, playing with the elements. So
Yep. Yep. I think we're supposed to leave time for
yeah,
questions, but Douglas,
yeah. Anybody in the audience want to talk?
Well, I was going to
sure.
ask you, before airtime, we talked about Leger and Stuart Davis and so on.
Right.
Um,
Yes,
are you familiar, you must be familiar with the late de Kooning's, the very last paintings,
yes,
the last 40 or 50 paintings, and when they were accusing the studio assistants of holding the brush in his hand and all that kind of thing.
yeah,
But the simplicity, setting aside the scandal, the
yes.
simplicity of that work, uh, the pale coloration,
Hmm.
the shadows, the overlapping, and yet still the same de Kooning gestural abstraction. I see a lot of that with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored. I love those
And
paintings. I love them.
yeah, and I was going to say also, now that I've had a chance to, I, of course, interviewed you before, and I remember the work, from a few years back.
Yes.
Um, are you familiar with George Sugarman, the sculptor?
Uh, not deeply, but yes,
So you should revisit him
I
because
will.
in the 70s and the 80s, he was a leading abstract sculptor, working
I'll look
working
closely at him.
mainly with wood, but also with other, bits of metal, and
Right, right, right. I'm gonna look. I'll look. I'll definitely take a close look now.
they're very
I can
much like
appreciate it now more than I maybe
uh
10 years ago.
they're very much like paintings sprawling across the floor, so to speak.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's cool. That's an interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, and from a purely mechanical point of view, I'm curious about how you scale up from the maquettes or sketches. Are you using an opaque projector, a video projector, you must be using some help. And there's no shame in that, of course, in scaling up from digital maquettes or
It
constructions.
depends on the scale of the canvas, Doug. So basically, um, if I have a very complicated design, with a lot of elements in it, and I'm going scaling up from like a 8 by 10 up until say maybe a 48 by whatever, 60, whatever, 4 by
Right.
5, whatever. The very most I will do, and I really limit myself to it because my drafting is so good, and I don't like illustrative looking paintings. I'm very much planar. The
Mhm.
most I will do is a very, very faint line coming in from the edge of the. It's almost like what the old masters did with the grid, but I basically would do it from the drawing and only bring in a very, very fine line to show where the pieces, because I have a very pristine surface canvas. It's very triple, it's very smooth, it's very beautiful, and my pigments are the way I mix them. So I don't want to be overworked. I don't want to be scraping out a lot. Like a lot of painters do that, it looks fine. But my paintings are,
So is that a yes?
so I'll do something. I'll do this at the most, a very thin line.
Okay.
But all of the gesture, all the drawing, all the modeling is me. It's not
Okay.
drawn. It's not
Okay.
projected. I've never painted on it. I've never had a projector there and doing all of that with the painting.
Mhm.
So I and if it's a canvas this size, and
Yeah, it's not needed if
then
it's
I'll just
small.
and I just draw it because
Right.
my drafting is pretty impeccable. It's
Right.
weird. I almost draw photographically, but I mean, I have a very excellent drafting skill. My
Hmm.
portfolio to enter Cornell was like I just did like single hair. I did I just drew Raphael's and Da Vinci's, and I just drew. And they said, just and Gillian Peterson Craig, my drawing professor, said, "You could be the finest draftsman that ever walked out of here." So I do pride myself on my drawings,
Hmm.
and my drawing and spatially. But I'll use a little help. I'll use a very, very crappy old projector if I just have to say, I got filaments here, I've got this over here. Where is it? I just to say, okay, it's there, and then I turn it off because I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like the look of an illustrative look.
Right.
I want my arm in the painting.
Well, the Renaissance
Yeah.
masters
They
often
they
used,
would do they would do the pouncing with the grid.
right. I mean, they
Yeah,
had techniques like, that were
you grid
you could
up.
call anticipating digital.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can do things like with the like Vermeer, with the optical, you can look through. I don't use those things like where you look through the thing and it projects your drawing onto the canvas and you draw and then you're drawing on
Yeah.
the, um, I don't use that device. But um, I whatever works for different artists. For me, I like to study my drawing and then the painting and uh, and definitely like in my paintings you can see the way I do the folds and everything else. They're not they're pretty much um, um, as a colorist, so they're not photographic really. I mean they're not.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of design work I do with my drawing in terms of the.
And what's happening with the sculpture? Because to me, it looks like that could easily be scaled up and be some fabulous sculpture.
It's interesting, I don't know, that would be something like having to work with a fabricator or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, that's for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, especially some of my curved paper things.
Well,
Maybe
there's a few good ones in the Hudson Valley.
I'm going to ask you.
See me after class.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm serious. I mean, I was thinking of some sheet metal, very thin sheet metal for some of these folded paper sculptures too. It would be very interesting. I mean, of course, I guess one of the greatest artists right now for working that way is Arlene Shackett. Her sculpture. I mean, those I love that. Did you see it at Storm, her work at Storm King?
Mhm.
Yeah, she's amazing. But yeah, I mean I would just it, the sheet metal, can you get it thin enough so that it's not like a killer to cut it, or do you know?
Absolutely. I mean, they're building houses out of sheet steel that they bend like yeah, that they bend on site
Aluminum. They're doing
in the
aluminum.
same way.
Aluminum.
Well,
Ah,
aluminum,
Aluminum.
yes, but also they're taking steel that's extruded very thin and that they can bend at will. They can also be, of course, powder coated or whatever. There are many things that have to be
right,
done
right.
now that weren't that practical earlier.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea.
I,
Yeah.
I think your problem would be with all the compound curves.
Yeah.
Right,
That's where it gets really difficult. And I don't
right.
know enough about it, but
Me, I don't know nothing about it. I'd be from ground zero with it. But
and make sure you have a place to put all this sculpture.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
point.
yeah. Another good
You would
point.
know.
I know.
Stephen, that is so my problem right now. It's like, why
Look,
do I do
look
this?
at you. What do you have behind you?
So
Oh my
I have
God.
one of my big installations behind
It
me,
looks
which is,
fantastic.
thank you, it's 193 pails and it's soft sculpture. It's all these
Oh
tree
wow.
stumps with silk organza stuffed with human hair
Oh my.
that I rust and tea stain. But the storing the shit drives you crazy afterward because you create the stuff. I have a show coming up where I've been doing these sculptures and they're completely taken up the whole studio and drawing. I
Yeah.
do it all, painting, drawing, and
Yeah.
sculpture. And I'm thinking, why do I keep doing this? Because now I have to, the stuff comes back. It keeps coming
Yeah, yeah,
back.
right, exactly. You go, oh, wait a minute. I had just sent that out. Now here it is back again.
Oh, it's like I'm so happy it's going to be gone for 4 months or
Where's the
5 months.
show? Where's the show going to be?
Well, this is I'm down in St. Petersburg, Florida now, and I'm
Oh,
having
oh, are you? I didn't
yeah,
know that. Yeah.
yeah, and I have one show that's opening at the MFA, which is all painting from the 90s of women bodybuilders, and now another show that's opening in June, which is all the current work, lost trees and my hair nest pieces, and there are these big drawings of the trees and I'm literally looking around the studio and I have no place left anywhere to do the next big drawing. I'm like, I can't wait for the stuff to go away so I can start the next one. But then
Yeah.
it's going to come back. I mean, no one's buying the stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, the market is horrible right now for contemporary artists.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
suffering. We're all suffering right now.
Anyway,
We're
well,
doing our work. I'm not suffering in my work, but I mean, I'm glad can work and but what a
I got
time.
some questions for you. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Oh,
Um, Are you making the collage, the painting that you're doing, the small pieces? Are you then making all of these different colors and swatches and different
yeah. All of the swatches are made. All of my well, I use if you see a large sheet of a certain color paper, I might order that from Talus, or whatever.
okay,
I'll look at paper sources and stuff, and I'll pull what I want if I'm for a large sheet. But for all of the artifact color series, collages, and all of my when you see different colored pigmented area, pigmented papers juxtaposed in with other things about I'd say 80% of them are my hand painted. Like I take, I mix,
that's what I want to
I
know.
take a
Yeah,
palette knife and I lay out because I have so many, I mix so many colors for my paintings. And
right.
I realized just several years ago, like why should I'm throwing these out, these mixtures. I've spent all day mixing, and then I always have these little batches left because you don't use it all on your painting. So I started this practice. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I started laying them out on woodblock papers, with my palette knife. And I drew like hundreds of them. as artists. And
Ah,
so I said, oh, so that's when I started saying, wait a minute, there's so many things I can do with this. Um,
mm-hmm.
I can create
Yeah.
collages with them. I can do color studies with them. I can, and so there, I'm working with them all the time. And the interesting part about it is that you can see a certain kind of color vocabulary in my work. I mean, it sort of refeeds itself because the studies are now process-wise, they're out of some of the mixtures that I've created and sort of knitting together a space. So you're getting a spatial relationship in the papers. You know,
Right. Well, because I was looking at those ripped papers and I thought, oh, she's taking that edge when she rips it and leaving that then, and you're
yeah, and
recreating that in the large paintings. Yeah.
I'm a trompe wall. I'm doing a trompe wall to
Yeah.
it's a trompe wall version of the tear, which is kind of fun
Yeah.
because it brings you back to the picture plane. So you get an illusionism combined with the picture with surface.
Right.
So
Right.
I like that. I was terrified for doing some of the illusional stuff because I mean, it was like as modernist, it's like, oh, that's a big no-no, another big no-no. But I just said, oh, um, I'm gonna do it. Throw caution to the wind, and it was okay because now
Hmm.
there's a lot more of a I just think if you want to get that that interplay, to just as long as they do it in an interesting way. you know it's
Yeah. Well, I used to teach the Joseph Albers method of color theory.
ah
Uh, I learned it from a friend who took it from someone who was a direct had been taught by Albers, and the I decided to audit her classes and see what she was teaching so that I could teach it because I was always fascinated with it, and I had learned the Itten method of color theory, and I was much more interested in Albers' method of color theory, and the exercises are fascinating, and they end up looking so much like what you're
yes.
what was going on
The
in
homage
your.
to the square. Did you see the show at the Morgan Library, the homage to the square? Oh, they were fantastic.
I didn't.
And it was so great. And basically, when I saw it, what he did was, um, he did it. It was all experiential. You know what I mean? He did
Yeah,
he did came first, and he would show them. I love the photos of Albert's just down, crouched down on the floor with his color swatches, putting one over the other, showing them see, and
yeah.
and that's when you're doing that. It's just I love it because it's just there. You can see it. The effect
Well,
is
it's fascinating, especially the
yeah,
exercises where you have take two colors and make them look like three, and you take
yes,
four colors and make
yeah.
them look like three.
Because if you get the color, if you get that in between color, if
Yeah,
that's my whole thing, that's what I've been doing for 40 years. If you can get that in between color and mix it and it looks transparent, you're a colorist.
right,
And
right.
that's why I never get tired of mixing because that's what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah,
And it's a great it's funny. I mean, it's just one of those things where you'd think I just never get tired of it because it's so immediate. It's not like a theoretical or looking at color charts and stuff. Itten was interesting in the sense of him. I like the fact that he could sort of when he talked about like identifying people by their palettes. That was like in the art of color. That was kind of cute and nice.
yeah,
But yeah, but
yeah,
Albers was in terms of practicing it. I agree. His
yeah.
his 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 uh his work was much more.
It was just so interesting and it's simple. It just
Yeah,
reacting. Yes,
exactly.
and understanding how much color influences the color around a color influences the color, and it's this constant
It's
interaction.
entirely, it's entirely, yes, it's entirely relative, the color.
Yep,
No, and
yep,
I love the way, there's no such thing as any kind of ugly color or, wrong color. I mean, it's just they're all amazing. And the,
yeah,
the beautiful the thing about it is if you know how to do those mixtures and get those in between, you can use any colors. There's,
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
and so I've been, I like to use a very wide range of pigments, and he was great.
Well, all those classes were taught with color aid paper, and that I loved my color aid paper.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
funny.
yeah.
I, and looking at my work now, you'd never know that I was a colorist. It's just kind of funny. I completely went away from it, but I used to in undergrad. I loved building the structures too. I made color going up, color going down, integrating
Oh
the whole
yeah,
color wheel, and building like I was an architect, building little mock buildings,
wonderful.
but looked like the kind of like the Corbusier, but it looks like also the, I don't know why, but the structures of the Bauhaus are very rectangular.
Yes,
Everything was rectangular, but it was interesting dealing with the color and how the color influenced the feeling of the size. There was a whole bunch of
yes,
interactions that were going on the minute you got dimensional. And
yes.
so it would be real interesting, I think, for you to definitely think about putting these things into sculpture, because the sculpture is going to change the feeling of the color.
Exactly. I love the constructivist. When I was at Cornell, I went up to
Yeah.
Toronto for an amazing constructivist show. It had, Le Tatlin and everything else, and I like the Russian painters that influence also. Like I love the Goncharova and Popova and those kind of spatial things, basically.
Mhm.
And so, but yeah, with the color, with it's just one of those. The main thing, coming out as being as a draftswoman, being somebody, oh, Ginny can draw anything kind of thing. For me, the big challenge was after school was like paint. To create the whole field, to create, a believable space with just color. So, I went right back to like just working with a knife and mixing a palette of color, getting the series go. I'm going to paint this thing here with like 8 colors. I'm going to mix this for this, and block it in, because I didn't want to just become this exquisite draftswoman. You know,
Yeah, I was going to
yeah.
ask you. Yeah, yeah,
Because it
about
was
that
like it was like I
because
didn't want to just do the National
yeah,
Academy thing,
yeah,
because I could
yeah.
do it. I could draw anybody. I could draw anything. I could draw, and it was sort of like it bothered me because I want space. I want to feel space, and you don't
Well,
get that with a
were you trying to subvert? Because I always think when I'm a drafts person as well, and
yeah,
then there's times when you think about trying to subvert that exquisite draftsmanship. This is what de Kooning, to me, that's what he was doing, because
yeah,
he was an incredible draftsman.
yes, exactly.
And then he would come in and just kind of destroy it. And it was fabulous, of course. So it's interesting. But you don't realize is it's still all in there,
Yes, it
because
is.
you
And
you can't you can't leave it. It stays with
well,
you.
it's not. Also, I'm liking it now in terms of cutting the papers. Cutting and
Yeah.
folding the papers is like drawing in space.
Yeah.
Because every time, you crease a piece of paper, you create a line.
I have a question, Jenny,
Yeah,
if I might. Um,
of course.
you are you obviously are skill driven and highly skilled at what you do in draftsmanship and in color theory and everything it's just unbelievable the amount of for lack of a better term, the amount of craft that you've piled into all this work that you've done for all these years. Do you ever have a need, or do you ever actually just say, I'm not going to do that for half an hour and let serendipity rule, or just go with whatever happy accident? Can you break out of your,
Yeah,
I-
yeah, I can.
can you do that?
Yeah, I do that. I do that. I like to sort of scare myself sometimes. I go, let's let it rip. Just like say, I'll just paint. You know, I'll do like a free form thing. I'll just draw blind and mix a batch of things just like willy-nilly and kind of play around and you know put it
It's
away.
another way, Stephen, of subversion in a way, but what you're offering is like try not to do
Yeah,
Well, there
that.
are systems that kind of self-determine that, in nature, for example, where it's a whole set of rules that we aren't really even aware of.
right.
That's why I ask.
Oh,
Mm.
it's a
But
good question. I find that I really enjoy so much of my practice is really just enjoying looking. That's one reason why I love being upstate as opposed to being in the middle of, 26th Street in New York City as a
mm,
painter, because the light it just zings around. I mean, I can go in there and just sit and look and play and not do anything with it. Just like, I mean, it's wild.
yeah. So on a personal note, I was on 29th Street and moved
Ah,
up here, and I am now on the other side of the river, a little bit south of you, and I've been here for a long time.
oh yeah,
Um, and it makes a huge difference in whatever you're doing.
doesn't it? Doesn't
Change
it?
of location, change of everything.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear you talk about
How did
that.
it change you coming up from 29th Street? What avenues were you between?
Well, scale for one thing,
Yeah, yeah,
but also, being in a let's call it a natural environment. I was able to just move in a direction that I just simply could not have in the city.
yeah, yeah.
The city was
Yeah.
about stuff that wasn't, I think, really wasn't me. But I've been here a long time, and but scale was part of it, but also just being around things that grow, being around rocks, being around,
Exactly.
the sky, birds, all that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and
There's an organic aspect that comes in up here, and you feel it just,
Yeah, and for you, it's the light, apparently, is the main
yeah,
the
yeah.
main thing.
It's just
So come down the road at some point and give me a lesson in color theory, will you? I had a professor in college who studied with Albers, and
Ah.
stupid me, I never really took his classes, never learned anything. Anyway,
oh,
It's never too late. You
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
go.
trying,
yeah.
Babs. I'm trying. And that was my next question. Can an old guy with no, background
Yes.
in this put three colors together and make them look good? Not
Yeah.
having much luck so far.
So
You're too modest, I'm sure.
I have
Yes.
a question for you, in terms of working from your paper models and then wanting to work in metal. I have a
I didn't say I want to work in metal.
okay, all right, all right.
I'm thinking about
But
it.
yeah, I was actually thinking so I sort of come from fabric, and so
Oh,
um uh I've been doing some sculptural pieces using metal mesh and draping that and sort of manipulating it that way, and you might find it satisfyingly more like your paperwork,
that's
maybe, to
interesting.
play with that and see. I don't know how you would get color into it,
What
but
kind of mesh is this? It's interesting.
there's you can pick it up in almost any like art store, but there's copper or like a,
Well, I've seen the
aluminum mesh.
copper mesh.
Yeah,
It's
copper mesh,
really,
aluminum mesh. They're
yeah.
they're they're often
You
they're,
can kind of squeeze it and shape it a little.
Dick
yeah,
Dick
yeah.
Blick Dick Blick sells it. You can go in. I actually got samples, and I because I'm using that too to make my sculptural. I have these fabricated limbs I'm making out of that, and you
Oh,
can
I
bend
love.
it and twist it.
Mm.
But
Cool.
I also just use
I love
hardware
what you're
wire.
doing with your tree stumps and the fabric and human hair, and it's just I
Ah,
just you're really, just making me think, about other processes and other, sort of ways
that
to
is
make things
exciting.
happen. It,
It
it
Well,
is
is.
very exciting, but
people don't realize it's made out of they're all made out of silk organza. They're sewn, and
Yeah.
then all the roots are stitched on. This is hours and hours of work. I
ah,
had an assistant. I showed this at two places, but until people get close up and they go, "Oh, it's stuffed with human hair," I said, "Yeah." Yeah.
So you have a list of beauticians that supply you or something?
I I have still bins in my studio. Talk about needing more storage. I have like huge bins filled with human hair.
wow. Now that's
That's
incredible.
That's great. That's really rich.
It's creepy. I gotta tell you, people come and they go, "Whoa, what's with this hair?" Anyway,
All right.
I just have a question about how you choose your colors. Do
Hey,
you?
you, Susan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Are you home yet?
No, I'm a fan. Okay.
Uh,
But I do have a question, like when you
this is
start,
Susan. She's a wonderful painter and sculptor.
thank you. Any rate, when you start out, do you get inspired by your when you make your forms, do you look at it and think, oh, I feel red or I feel orange? And then do you want to limit your colors for each piece? Do you limit it? It seems you have so many variations within the color. Do you decide to limit the number of colors?
Yeah, well, I go back and forth. Like because of all the artifact, because of all the papers that I've created, as you've seen them, all the striped papers on the woodblock paper, I'll be seeing certain relationships, and then I'll start looking through sample books and saying, "Ooh, I think I want to get one of those ochre kind of things to pick up some of that thing that I'm seeing there." I start kind of creating recipes.
Right.
And I say, this could be really interesting. So then I'll order 3 sheets of a certain, light, like phthalo green, because I
Mhm.
say it's going to go beautifully with that wonderful kind of like, coral kind of mixture I did with the cadmium, with the light, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think about recipes. It's like cooking.
right.
And if I organize those color palettes and stuff in those pieces, I say, okay, this I'll be able to get something from this. These will be the
oh my
smaller
God.
pieces, so I'll think, sculpturally.
But you get
Oh
so
my
many
God. I gotta
variations
go.
within your color. Do you say to yourself, I shouldn't do more than two or three colors as the base?
I don't usually say that, but it usually does sort of sort itself out.
Hmm.
And I may even looking now at some doing all the same, it's like a series of like say 3 or 4 little sculptural pieces that are all the same color,
Hmm.
with maybe one note of something coming in, maybe a
Right.
fire or something, you know what I mean? I'm
Right.
starting to kind of like, but I go back and forth. I do that, and then all of a sudden I want to like, get like, more. So, yeah, I go back and forth.
Okay. Well, you're
That's a good
great.
question, yeah. So, and so are you painting down there? No.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. I thought I saw one posted on
Yeah,
Instagram.
but let's face it. I mean, what's interesting is we share a lot, but we are both so different in so many ways. I mean, but that makes it very interesting, I think.
Yeah, well, I find you very interesting, Susan.
Same here.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Ginny and Wendy. And please join us April 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern for an engaging dialogue between Douglas Shear and author Tina Dickey. Thank you again. And also thank you to our board members and our volunteers. And good night.
Good night. Thank you very
Thank
Right.
you,
much.
Alex.
Good night and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.